Walk like a man, even though you walk alone. Why court approval once the road is known? Let come who will, but if they all turn home, the goal still awaits you. Go on alone.
Follow your dreams, what leads to was unknown. Life's but a shadow, once the dreams have flown. What if men cry, your dream is not our own? Your soul knows the answer. Go on alone.
Give like your heart, bless everything that's grown. Fear not the loving, all this world's your own. Make rich the soil, but once the seed is sown, seek freedom, don't linger. Go on alone. Walk like a man, even though you walk alone. Why court approval once the road is known? Let come who will, but if they all turn home, the goal still awaits you. Go on alone. Go on alone. Go on alone.
This week's reading is from Rays of the One Light, and is entitled To Each According to His Faith. These are parallel commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. John, we read, Everyone that doeth evil hateth the light, neither cometh to the light, lest his deeds should be reproved. But he that doeth truth cometh to the light, and that his deeds may be made manifest, that they are wrought in God. It is a common experience shared by most people that when a person errs, he experiences a desire to hide that error from his conscience instead of holding it up for purification. Error clutches its misdeeds to itself and resists correction, though it is only in the state of purity that we can achieve perfect freedom. It requires an act of will to offer that awareness up to the light and to hold it there until one's inner darkness is completely dissipated. For every state of consciousness has its own attractive power. The more we allow that attraction to act upon us, the more we attract to ourselves the objective circumstances and experiences natural to it. Our faith is the attractive power of our underlying state of consciousness. Goodness attracts goodness. It takes goodness even to see goodness. Evil attracts evil, and it takes evil even to see evil, that is, to take special note of its existence. Whatever there is in you of darkness or light, offer it up to the heights. In the supreme light alone will we find salvation. Accept nothing less in yourself as your lasting reality. As the Bhagavad Gita says in the 12th chapter, cling thou to me, clasp me with heart and mind, so shalt thou dwell surely with me on high. But if thy thought droops from such height, if thou beest weak to set body and soul upon me constantly, despair not. Give me lower service. Seek to reach me, worshipping with steadfast will. And if thou canst not worship steadfastly, work for me, toil in works pleasing to me. For he that laboreth right for love of me shall finally attain. But if in this thy faint heart fails, bring me thy failure. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. This is from Whispers from Eternity, Yoganandaji's book of prayer poems. All futurity danced in me the infinite rhythm. I disconnected my awareness from the little garden plot of the senses and switched it to the vast territory of the infinite. The aurora of my awareness spread like dancing waves of light in the aurora borealis and embraced thy cosmic wonderland. When thus I entered that vast panorama, my awareness no longer dulled by the opiate of sensory noises, nor blindfolded by the veil of mere appearances, I stood marveling before countless streams of radiant, rushing thoughts, rippling through millennia from long dead, still living, and yet to be born civilizations. All time, past, present, future, danced its infinitude of rhythms on the stage of my all-embracing consciousness. Well, we are celebrating many things today. Obviously, the scripture reading itself, there are many of you coming here to take discipleship. It's always a joy when a group of new friends chooses to take this vow of discipleship. It's very special, obviously, in your own lives, but it's also special for all of us because it reminds us of our own vow of discipleship, and I'll be talking about that today, the discipleship to Yoganandaji. But this is also a special time because it is the right around the time of Swami Kriyanandaji's Moksha day, the day of his leaving of the body, which was April 21st, Friday, which we've been celebrating this weekend. And I thought to share, Swamiji didn't write a letter on the occasion of his passing, obviously. It's the one sort of significant day in our lives that we don't have the opportunity to sort of reflect on in advance or maybe afterwards, but it's harder to send letters from the other side. But he did write a very special letter on the anniversary of his discipleship day, his last anniversary, September 12th. This was 2012, his 64th anniversary of the day that he met Paramahansa Yogananda. It was a very significant day for him, obviously, a very significant day we came to see for all of us, because between the meeting of disciple and master, that day touched all of our lives as well. We're all in this room today because of the work of Yoganandaji and the work of Swami Kriyanandaji. As I was saying to you yesterday, it can be helpful to get to know Swamiji through his writings, through his videos, through his photos and so on. But remember that he's not just an image or not just a recording of someone that you're getting to know. Remember, he came to Chennai in 2013 and said there must be a center here. And so in that way, he directly touched your life. He may have had you in mind when he said, let us have a center here. Why did he say that? He would love to have a center everywhere. If we could just have a pocket full of centers and just start passing them out to all the different cities, we would be glad to. But the thing is, he said that in response to Chennai's own enthusiasm for the lecture that he gave, for the 2,000 people that attended, for the 1,000 more that were turned away. He said, the potential here is very great. And so the enthusiasm, the interest is very great. And so let us have a center here from no center to center. Usually there are several steps in between. And this was just step 1, step 8, fine. And so it's important to remember that also as a spiritual principle, that Swamiji could have come, the interest could have been less, and then maybe he wouldn't have said that. Please come in, Ravi. Otherwise I'll have to worry about you for the whole time. So, it's a spiritual principle that the masters and God respond according to our interest. If there were less interest, Swamiji might not have felt inspired to say, let's have a center here, let's just see how things go. But when we pray to God, God answers the prayers that we ask. Remember, He answers the prayers that we ask. First of all, He answers prayers at all. If that's news, He answers prayers. Remember that line in Autobiography of a Yogi, Master said, "No man lives who has not seen certain of his prayers granted." No man lives. So if you are alive, which you are, then you have seen certain of your prayers granted. And maybe you know which ones those are. Maybe you've seen that. There are probably many more that we don't know. I often like to think of, as when children, when they learn to walk and they start to stumble and the mother is pulling sharp furniture out of the way, and then they're about to step on something, and then she quickly yanks it out so they're fine, and then she slightly guides them away from the cooking stove, and then they brush up against something and get a little tiny bruise and say, "Ah! What are you doing? Why aren't you helping me?" And it's just like, oh my gosh, if you could see how she was helping you. But that's us. In our lives, Divine Mother is really quickly pulling the alligators and crocodiles and then snatching away the razor blades right before we take a step and keeping us completely safe. And then one little tiny brush and we get furious that she's let us get into trouble. And so it's understandable, it's better to bring her into that than just think, oh, I'm all alone. It's better to say, God, where are you? Help me. We have a right to say that to the mother, certainly. But still, she's with us constantly. And if we only knew her protection, we would be very joyful. And so let us be joyful. But in any case, the prayers that are granted are the prayers that we ask. So what are we asking for? I know someone who told me he was praying to see the spiritual eye. I just have to see the spiritual eye. I have just once, but I have to see it. So I can know that it's there. Praying, more and more intense and emotional, which is the opposite of seeing the spiritual eye. And then, so then he finally got nowhere and gave up. And then in that relaxation, then that's when God can come in. May have been, I want to see the spiritual eye, show me the spiritual eye, tap, 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 don't bother me, I want to see the spiritual eye. It's just like we're, I can't see it, I can't see it, I can't see it. What's the affirmation? I can't see it. So guess what happens? Can't see it. And so, but this voice came into his mind and said, what do you really want? I mean, out of all the things that you could want, what do you really want? And he just quickly said, it's almost out of habit, but it was a good habit, Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Freedom. I want to be free in this life. Because seeing the spiritual eye, after all, then what? Then it's time for lunch. Nirvikalpa Samadhi, then it's lunch all the time. Infinite freedom. You're done. No more lunch. Or eternal lunch, depending on it. But take your metaphor. If infinite dosa sounds good to you, think of that as freedom. If it sounds like, I'd rather not have to eat anymore, you can have that too. But we graduate in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. We graduate, we're done. So in other words, he was, when asked, what do you really want? He instinctively said, freedom. And so then the voice in his mind said, then why not pray for that? again, the prayers that are granted are the prayers that we ask. And so why hold back in what you're asking for? There's no reason to. So this all came from Chennai's response, drawing Swamiji saying, "Let there be a center." And so remember that too, that by your interest you can summon blessings. By your curiosity, by the energy you give, you can draw more. Swamiji told in a video that we were watching of an interview that he gave, and he said it was a very helpful interview, and a lot of things he said were new things that he said because the interviewers were interested. He said it makes a big difference when the person asking you the questions is interested in hearing the answers. And so by interest, you can summon that. It says that again in the autobiography of a yogi. Master says of Sri Yukteswar that any disciple could summon an all-night discourse from Sri Yukteswarji by displaying sufficient interest. It's the same with God. If we offer our interest, if we offer our energy, then we get much more in return. God won't impose. But on the other hand, when we open ourselves and say, I want it all, please, Vanga, then he does Vanga. I'm not yet through conjugation of verbs yet. I'd like to read this letter that Swamiji sent out on his 64th anniversary of meeting Yoganandaji. And take this not only as the message relating to the message of his life, obviously as we're again celebrating his whole life through on this occasion of his leaving of the body, but also because today is a discipleship day for some of you, and it is also a reminder to all of us of our own discipleship if we've taken it. And it also holds out the principle of discipleship, whether to a guru, whether we're a disciple of a guru or not in this life, we have to be disciples of truth. Today is my 64th birthday, spiritual, that is, September 12th, 1948. I was accepted as a disciple by Paramahansa Yogananda. How well I remember that day. How well I remember the years of seeking that had brought me to him. And I thank God for all the blessings he has showered upon me in this life. There has been suffering, yes, but as the Sufi Saint Rabia said, he is not worthy of God who does not forget all his sufferings in the contemplation of the beloved. I am grateful for everything, for my tests perhaps especially, since all of them have brought me closer to my cosmic beloved. All my life has been dedicated to finding truth. I remember the time many years ago when I was still a child. My mother and we 3 boys crossed the Canadian border into the United States. The customs official asked Mother if she had anything to declare. And Mother said, no. All 3 of us boys put our hands over our mouths in shock and cried, "Oh, Mother!" Grimly, the official demanded that she open the trunk, and there he found 3 little birch bark canoes. Total value certainly less than $10. I think all 3 of us have always been incapable of telling a lie. But when I was 13, my quest for truth became increasingly urgent. I didn't want money, I didn't want fame, I didn't want worldly comfort. All I wanted was to know why we've been put on this planet, what the purpose of life is. Has it a higher purpose? I sought it through reason. Had I sought it through love, I might have come onto the spiritual path much sooner. But God to me was an abstraction. I therefore sought truth through science, through social systems, through the kind of inspiration I hoped would be found in artistic inspiration. But I was deeply in earnest. I hoped through playwriting to share truths with others, but I couldn't do so superficially. Finally, I decided I myself don't know truth. It would be a ridiculous presumption then to share my ignorance with others. My singing teacher, an old woman in Philadelphia, had told me, I'm living for only one thing now, to see you become a great singer. This she had said holding both hands in the air. But success at anything was meaningless to me without truth. If I found that truth, I wanted to share it with everyone. After realizing that I couldn't be a playwright, though a number of people had predicted a great future for me in that field, I started to become desperate. How was I ever to find truth? I remember the turning point in my life. It came one evening in Charleston, South Carolina. I had begun to realize that the only people in this world who had really helped humanity were all spiritual figures. Jesus Christ, Buddha, and the like. Any good done by anyone else had been only bubbles in the surf. I had never seriously considered God, because I had imagined God, if he existed, to be unknowable. This evening, however, I took a long walk into the deepening darkness and asked myself very sincerely, if there's a God, what must he be? He can't be just a judge waiting for us to err so he can clap us into prison, meaning hell, for eternity. After pondering the matter for some time, the thought came to me. I am asking this question consciously. I could not have been artificially programmed to ask such a question. That means I myself am independently conscious. Therefore, God must be consciousness. I realized then that this meant I must be a small part of that consciousness. My job in life, then, I realized, must be to open myself more to that consciousness. I must and shall devote my whole life to trying to make myself more perfectly open to that consciousness. What he does with my life, then, is up to him. I came back to my apartment that evening overwhelmed by the grandeur of this awareness. My 4 roommates all laughed at my seriousness, but I simply withdrew to my room. I would devote my life to seeking God. At first, I wondered if I was not going crazy. I did not know that anyone had ever sought God before. I knew nothing of the lives of the saints. But I finally concluded, even if I go crazy, this is the only possible path for me. I didn't know how to seek him. I thought of becoming a hermit, perhaps in a Brazilian jungle. Someone in Charleston mentioned to me the Bhagavad Gita. "What's that?" I asked. "It's a Hindu scripture," he replied. And then the question, "Hindu, what's that?" I know nothing whatever about any other spiritual traditions, and although I did know something of my own, the Christian, it was too closely associated in my mind with the ordinary life I knew most Christians led. It has only been since understanding the life of Jesus in its own context that I've come to understand that he too had all the answers I sought. I am so grateful that God heard my prayers and led me to Yogananda, and that Yogananda accepted me as a disciple. But at that time, I must admit, I wasn't seeking a guru. The very thought of becoming any man's disciple was, to me, well, unthinkable. I had never met anyone that I considered wise enough to follow. But I did know I needed help. I needed guidance. I was struggling and stumbling in a desert wasteland. And then, as I said, God led me to Yogananda. I found his autobiography in a New York bookstore. In fact, I found it the very day I had just put Mother on the ship to go join Dad in Egypt. This was what I had been seeking so desperately. It was my answer. I was free. I had no obligations to anyone. I took the next bus across the country to meet Yogananda, and the day I met him, he accepted me. I think mine was the most whirlwind courtship he ever had. I didn't expect the path to God be easy. I didn't expect the path to God to be easy, which is fortunate because it hasn't been. My body, for one thing, has given me trouble all my life. Still, here I am at 86, still energetically serving God. Mentally, I have had my hardships, but I'm grateful for all of them. As Master said, living for God is martyrdom. I am indifferent to whatever punishes my ego. Indeed, I'm grateful for it. For ego is the one thing we must overcome if we would know God. I am grateful also for all the many true friends God has given me in you all. You are a wealth beyond compare. Thank you, and thank you for helping me to reach this day of supreme gladness in my life. In God's love, Swami Kriyananda. Swamiji really lived his life as a disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda. To him, that was his most significant quality. He even begins his new path by his autobiography, The New Path, by saying, sometimes a person, though not significant in himself, has a life of significance because of living in connection with a great person like Yoganandaji. He says it much more eloquently than that. I'm just paraphrasing it. But that my life has been given meaning, he said, by having lived with Paramahansa Yogananda. And his whole life, Swamiji defined himself as a disciple, not as a teacher, not as a composer, not as an author. He wrote 149 books. He composed over 400 pieces of music. He gave thousands of lectures. He spoke, I think, 9 languages and lectured in 7 of them. And he founded 9 communities throughout the world, including this spiritual center that we're standing in, sitting in, being in. So much he accomplished, and none of that, he said, he took to himself. He said, this was all done in my Guru's name, and he meant it. Many of you know Mr. Karthikeyan, who is a friend of Ananda Sanghas, and he said, what impresses me most about Swamiji is that he will only ever say, I am a disciple of my Guru. Even when people try to say, but you too are a great teacher, and maybe we can call you Sri Swami Kriyananda or Sri Swami Kriyananda or Sri 108. And he wouldn't have any of that. He just said, I am a disciple of my Guru. Now we can ask why, or we can wonder about that, because if you have seen Swamiji, or you've seen his videos, or read his words, or even understanding that, the vibration of that letter, and that's what I mean, the powerful vibration that came from him. He was a saint. Master said, you will find God at the end of this life. So we have it from Master's own authority that Swamiji found God at the end of life. That's how we know. It's not a sentiment or we hope he found God. He did. Master said so. Did he mean the last breath of life you'll find God? The last year of life? The last 64 years of life? I don't know. But the end of life you'll find God. And so Swamiji did. And so we have every sort of justification, you could say, in praying to him too, as a saint. Sometimes people ask, why isn't Swamiji's picture placed centrally on the altar? In fact, one person came even somewhat frustrated, like, listen, he founded this and we're all here, and why won't you people put his picture on the altar? And we said, it's because of Swamiji's own wish. Swamiji said, the altar is for the avatars, and don't put my picture on the altar. And in his lifetime, sometimes when he would come to a place and there would be a picture of his on the altar, and I've seen him where he would say, could you give me that? And he'd just take it, he would just put it down and say, no. He said, we don't want to lose sight of what the ideal is. And even if in my life, my own life, Swamiji was the most saintly person, the most wise, the most joyful that I met. Still, he didn't want us to look to him, but to look to God and look to Master. But Master himself didn't want us to look to him. When he was with a guest, she said to him, Master, at lunch, Dr. Lewis was your first disciple in America, wasn't he? And Master, who had been very friendly and up until that point, said, that's what they say. And she was a little surprised, and why that reaction? he said kindly, I don't think of anyone as I don't call anyone my disciples. He said, they're God's disciples. And so Master said, I killed Yogananda long ago. No one dwells in this temple now but God. It was God coming through him. And when Swamiji first met Yoganandaji, when they were living together, his first conception of him was as a very, very wise man. Which of course an avatar is much more than a wise person. And one day Master looked at him and said, if you knew my consciousness. And Swamiji in time grew to see how much more there was. But we start with what's familiar to us. We can't help in terms of seeing things according to our own present understanding. And I wondered how Swamiji could always just say, I'm a disciple of Yoganandaji. I mean, I could understand it intellectually, but why he would just say, listen, don't give me any praise, don't focus on me at all. And I came to realize later, especially after Swamiji left the body, because I had seen such greatness in him that if I shared any of that stories of his or whatever, it was to try to give people some experience of what it was like to be with him, and and even more, to help them develop their own connection with Swamiji, with Yoganandaji, and so on, because that's the source of my inspiration. And they have so much to give, so much more than in a regular, sort of limited human context. As people, we can only sort of provide energy to so many others. And we're not yet in the infinite consciousness. Acting as channels for that, we can give it to any number. Master had Swamiji outside of the church, stand outside of the church and shake hands with people. And so Master would have this practice himself sometimes. After a service, he would shake hands with people. And so he was saying to Swamiji, now you do it. And he said, Swamiji, after doing it, he said people consciously or unconsciously, as they shook his hand, were drawing on him, as a representative of Master, taking his blessings, in other words. And by the end of it, Swamiji was exhausted. And he said, sir, please don't give me that work. And Master said, you were giving them your energy. He said, you should think of God and give them his energy. And so then Swamiji, the next Sunday, when he had that job and did that, he felt more energized at the end of it, even than when he began. The instrument is blessed by that which flows through it, Master said. Our job is not to be the source, not to be the source of healing, not to be the source of wisdom, not to be the source of security, not to have to know it all. We were joking with some friends lately. A friend of mine was saying that every time when someone says something to me, and I say, yes, 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 I know, I realize it means, no, 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 I don't know. Please say it again, because that when the ego is quick to say, yeah, I got it, that we're actually pushing it away. And we're not open to it. I mean, it's sort of like hearing the same story. Swamiji would tell stories. And sometimes, people might think, well, I've heard that story before. And it's like, look, but if we heard the story and fully grasped it to its depths of truth, we might just go into samadhi right then. You see, there's no limit to how deep we can take something. It applies on deeper and deeper levels, and it may be that story has come up, or that message has come up, that we've heard many times today, for what we need to hear today, in this moment. God is, as Shankaracharya said, Satchit Ananda. And Master translated that as ever existing, ever new, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. He added that new, saying that bliss, the experience of that bliss is ever new, joyful. It isn't as if you discover in God, well, here I am existing and conscious. Blissful again today. It's not something you ever get tired of. It's ever new. Just as each day we find it's nice, we have this beautiful garden outside. And every day when we go out, there's some new flower there. Or I was walking out one day sort of having to go to some errand, and it's hot and I'm late and you're about to basically fight with the autos to see if I can cross the street. And a butterfly just came right in front of me. How beautiful. Not just that the butterfly was there, not just that God was waving hello, but that the butterfly was on its way to the garden, to the flowers. And I thought, I remember what the front yard looked like before the garden. Let's just say the garden version is better. But the butterflies were drawn there, and they wouldn't have been if it had just been rubble like it was before. That something was created, and even God, through the butterflies, nature itself was responding to that. It's one of the challenges we have in the city, and Chennai has many more trees and much more greenery than some cities, but still, that connectedness with nature can sometimes be lost, and so whatever we can do, we need that for our souls. And so this was a sweet example to me of God's presence and God winking, saying, hello, stay awake, it's a new day. You don't know what I have in store for you today. Remember, it's through meditation, above all, that it becomes easy to maintain this ever new joy. I mean, you can imagine it could be straight. Okay, it said ever new. Don't do anything like I did before. Don't say anything. What's your name? How can I say it in an ever new way? You know, it's just that it's not a mental concept. Master did say, do something new every day. Do one thing new every day. It helps break us out of psychological ruts and habits. I mean, it can mean walking a different way to the kitchen. I mean, but find something to do something different. It keeps us awake. It's very helpful that way. Now, India has its own way of keeping us awake too, with all of its ever newness. I remember I've seen some things here I've just never seen before. We were walking into a mall in Gurgaon. It was very crowded. It was a very big day. Suddenly, everybody was partying. And we were all suddenly, you have to choose left or right, but not straight. And I thought, what's happening? And as soon as I got to the junction, I saw a huge black bull with massive horns sleeping quietly at the foot of, Reliance Fashion or whatever. And just there, everyone, it was understood, don't disturb the bull. And I thought, I will remember this. I remember it's whatever it was almost 10 years ago. And so I remember also looking down the road and seeing a man on half of a motorcycle. The back half of a motorcycle, just traveling down the road. And I just, am I sleeping? Like, what am I seeing? I just, in computer science terms, my eyes could not parse the image. I was just, what am I looking at? And finally, as he got close, I realized he was holding a mirror. So I couldn't see somehow, but I don't know why I couldn't see the driver, but whatever it was. Okay, I guess he was going away from me. That's how it was. I just, wow. Just the mind stops. And that can be helpful. So, anyway, these kinds of things, though we can chuckle about them or whatever, we can get frustrated by the different kinds of joyful experiences that we have every day. We should remember they're keeping us awake. And that's very helpful. Even a friend of mine from India said, I lived in the US for many years, and all those days are kind of a blur, he said, because everything was just normal. He said, in here I remember every day. Well, on that day the power went out, on that day the water tank exploded, on that day the transformer exploded, again. And so it's just, it keeps us awake, and it's very helpful to stay awake and see, excuse me, and seek God. Certain people, if they start laughing, then it's hard for me to maintain. So, anyway, the point is that when we meditate, we maintain that ever newness. We sort of clear away those things that keep us locked. The old habits get washed away, and we open ourselves to the moment. Meditation is really, in a way, being present in this moment. And so easy to develop that enthusiasm for what is happening today, even if it's a struggle, even if it's a big test, to say, Divine Mother, it's fine, I don't want it. If it gets in the way of my love for you, if it's making me unhappy, what do I want it for? You know, sometimes Divine Mother is trying to take something from us that we're holding on to, and she's trying to heal us. I like to use the image sometimes of if you get a wood splinter in your finger, and Divine Mother comes and says, I need to take this. And, no, don't touch, you won't touch it. It's like, give me your finger. No. Then we have the finger here, and it's gonna hurt, it's gonna hurt, it's gonna hurt. And she says, I already took it out. Okay, it didn't hurt. That wasn't a part of us. It wasn't anything we needed. She's coming to take it away. And the sooner that we can just say, please, Indanga, just take it away. I don't want it. I know I probably should have said it. But anyway, I say it's fine. If it doesn't make sense, then read between the lines somehow to find a way to make it make sense. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing. I said meaning a little knowledge of Tamil is a dangerous thing. I had the same experience in India. I was very frustrated with a taxi dispatch or taxi service in the days of call taxis where you basically just called up, Frank's call taxi, and he just sent some cousin of his in a car. What we'd had in Gorgon. And so I called this guy, and the driver was, let's say, not in a state to be around other people. So I said, I specifically asked that you send a good driver, and that the driver, to put a fine point on it, the driver be clean. And so I said in Hindi, driver saaf kijiye. The guy who was apologizing, sorry sir, yes sir, sorry sir, sorry, he started going, sorry sir. The whole effect is wasted. So, anyway, but we can, I don't know, maybe you can translate the Divine Mother, mujhe saaf kijiye. Just let us be clean in Divine Mother's love. And so, as we now move into this discipleship ceremony, whether you're taking the vow for the first time, whether you're inspired from remembering your own vow, or whether you're just observing it as a friend, remember, as I said, we all, above all things, have to be disciples to truth, disciples of God. And we're doing that in seeing and taking a vow to live in Anandaji. But pray for those who are taking this vow, and remember that if our lives, if we stay dedicated to truth, if we do everything we can to choose happiness, we will find it in